For years, Venezuela has been framed as a collapsing petrostate, a country hollowed out by sanctions, corruption, and cartel influence. But Venezuela did not survive in isolation. Behind the scenes, another global power stepped in, not out of ideology, but out of strategy. That power is Russia. Today, we are breaking down the relationship between Russia and Venezuela, how it intersects with oil, weapons, sanctions evasion, and organized crime, and why this partnership matters far beyond Latin America. This is not about friendship. It is about leverage, survival, and asymmetric power. Welcome to Breaking Down the Cartels. Venezuela matters to Russia for one central reason: power. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Iran, more than Russia itself. But oil alone does not explain Moscow's interest. Venezuela sits in the Western Hemisphere, a region historically dominated by U.S. influence. For Russia, that geography is strategic. A Russian-aligned government in Venezuela represents a pressure point close to the United States, a challenge to U.S. dominance in Latin America, and a way to project power without direct military confrontation. Venezuela is not just an oil partner, it is leverage. When Venezuela came under heavy U.S. sanctions, Western capital fled. Banks closed their doors, energy companies pulled out, diplomatic isolation deepened. This is where Russia thrives. Russia has decades of experience operating under sanctions. It understands shadow banking, alternative payment systems, shell companies, intermediaries, and non-dollar trade. When Venezuela became sanctioned, it became compatible. Two isolated states began solving problems together. Russia's involvement in Venezuela intensified through its state-owned oil giant, Rosneft. Rosneft did not simply invest in oil fields, it provided financing, technical expertise, and marketing channels for Venezuelan crude. At one point, Rosneft handled a significant share of Venezuela's oil exports, effectively acting as a middleman between PDVSA and global markets. This allowed Venezuela to sell oil while bypassing sanctions, and it allowed Russia to control oil flows without formal ownership, extract value at discounted rates, and gain leverage over a sovereign energy supply. When sanctions tightened, Rosneft officially exited on paper. In reality, assets were transferred to new shell entities. The oil never stopped moving. Russia's relationship with Venezuela is not limited to oil. It extends into military support. Over the years, Russia has supplied Venezuela with fighter jets, helicopters, air defense systems, small arms, and ammunition. Russian military advisors have periodically appeared in Venezuela, especially during moments of political instability. This support serves one purpose: regime survival. A government that feels militarily secure is harder to overthrow, whether internally or externally. For Russia, keeping the Venezuelan regime in power protects debt repayment, energy contracts, and long-term geopolitical positioning. Venezuela is also a logistical hub. Cocaine routes from Colombia pass through Venezuelan territory on their way to Europe, West Africa, and the Caribbean. Senior Venezuelan officials have been accused of facilitating this trade, often referred to as the cartel of the suns. Russia does not need to manage cartels directly. It only needs the state to remain intact. As long as the government controls ports, airspace, and territory, the internal economy, licit or illicit, becomes secondary. For sanctioned states, black market revenue is not a flaw. It is a survival mechanism. Russia and Venezuela also share another advantage. They operate comfortably outside traditional Western financial systems. Together, they rely on shell companies, offshore accounts, opaque gold transfers, cryptocurrency experiments, and non-dollar settlements. Venezuela's gold reserves have reportedly moved through shadow channels. Russia, facing its own sanctions, understands these mechanisms well. This parallel financial system allows cartel money to blend with state revenue, oil profits to disappear and reappear, and sanctions to lose effectiveness. Once money enters the shadow economy, tracing it becomes nearly impossible. Unlike Western governments, Russia does not condition partnerships on elections, human rights, or anti-corruption reforms. Russia's foreign policy is transactional. If you oppose U.S. influence and honor agreements, you qualify. This makes Russia an ideal partner for governments under pressure. No lectures, no public condemnation, no demands for reform. For Venezuela, this relationship provides legitimacy and protection. For Russia, it provides leverage in a region historically outside its sphere. Russia also understands energy as a weapon. It has used oil and gas leverage in Europe for decades. Venezuela adds another layer. By helping Venezuela stay afloat, Russia keeps global oil supply unpredictable, complicates U.S. sanction strategies, and positions itself as a broker when sanctioned barrels suddenly matter again. When energy markets tighten, leverage increases, and Russia knows how to exploit that. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, its need for allies intensified. Venezuela responded with diplomatic support, public alignment against Western sanctions, and symbolic resistance to U.S. pressure. In return, Russia reinforced its commitment. This relationship is not about Venezuela alone. It is about building a coalition of sanctioned states that normalize defiance. The global drug trade thrives where states are weak, but also where states are protected. Venezuela is not weak. It is insulated. Russian backing reduces the likelihood of regime change, international intervention, or economic collapse. That stability allows cartel logistics to operate with minimal disruption. The drug war is not lost because of street-level dealers. It is lost because geopolitical priorities outweigh enforcement. Russia and Venezuela operate from the same playbook. Sanctions are opportunities. Illicit trade fills gaps. Control matters more than transparency. Survival outweighs legitimacy. In this system, cartels are not enemies of the state. They are parallel economies. Russia is not investing in Venezuela for short-term profit. It is investing in strategic positioning, energy leverage, and U.S. distraction. A Russian presence in Venezuela forces Washington to divide its attention between Europe, Asia, and Latin America. That alone makes the investment worthwhile. Russia and Venezuela are not allies of convenience. They are partners of necessity, bound by sanctions, united by opposition to U.S. dominance, sustained by oil, arms, and shadow economies. And the cartels do not exist outside this system. They exist within it. Because in today's world, the drug trade is no longer just criminal. It is geopolitical. This is breaking down the cartels. Please like and subscribe. To understand Russia's influence in Venezuela, you also have to zoom out. Because Venezuela is not an isolated case. It is part of a broader Russian strategy across South America and Central America, one built on arms, energy, diplomacy, and selective relationships with governments that want leverage against the United States. Let's start with Colombia. For decades, Colombia has been one of the United States' closest allies in the region. Billions of dollars in U.S. aid, joint military training, intelligence cooperation focused on cartels and insurgent groups. On paper, Colombia should be hostile territory for Russia. But geopolitics is not static. As Colombia's internal politics shifted, so did its foreign policy posture. New governments began signaling interest in a more balanced international alignment. Not pro-Russia, but not exclusively pro-United States either. Russia noticed. Moscow does not need Colombia to become an ally. It only needs Colombia to become less aligned. That is the difference between dominance and disruption. Russia's approach to Colombia has been subtle. Diplomatic outreach, trade discussions, energy and fertilizer negotiations, media influence through Russian state outlets, no tanks, no bases, just presence. Because even small cracks in U.S. alignment matter. Now look at Central America. Countries like Nicaragua, Cuba, and to a lesser extent El Salvador and Honduras have long histories of tension with Washington. Russia has leaned into that history. In Nicaragua, Russia has provided military cooperation, police training, intelligence, and surveillance support. Officially, these are framed as anti-drug and anti-crime partnerships. In reality, they give Russia something more valuable: a foothold. Nicaragua has allowed Russian presence in ports, airspace access, and security infrastructure. Not enough to start a war, but enough to remind Washington that Russia can operate in the U.S. backyard. This is not about scale. It is about symbolism and leverage. Cuba plays a similar role. While no longer the Cold War focal point it once was, Cuba remains strategically valuable. Russia has renewed intelligence cooperation there. Signals intelligence, communications monitoring, military dialogue. Again, not about invasion, about proximity. Now look south again, to Brazil. Brazil is not a sanctioned state. It is a global player, a member of BRICS. And Russia views Brazil as critical. The relationship between Russia and Brazil centers on energy cooperation, fertilizers and agriculture, defense technology discussions. Brazil depends heavily on imported fertilizers. Russia is a major supplier. That dependence creates influence, not control, but leverage. Argentina tells a similar story. Economic instability, debt pressure, a desire for alternatives to Western financial systems. Russia has offered energy investment, nuclear cooperation, arms discussions. Even when deals do not fully materialize, the signal is sent. There are options outside Washington. Now connect this back to cartels and illicit economies. Russia does not run drug trafficking networks, but it understands something fundamental. Illicit economies thrive where states are politically protected and diplomatically insulated. When governments feel shielded from Western pressure, enforcement priorities shift. Anti-cartel efforts become selective. Corruption becomes survivable. In regions where Russian influence grows, the focus often moves away from cooperation with U.S. law enforcement. Information sharing slows. Joint operations become politically sensitive. Extraditions stall. These are not accidents. They are side effects. Now consider Venezuela's neighbors. When Russia supports Venezuela diplomatically and militarily, it stabilizes a regional hub. That hub influences trafficking routes across Colombia, Brazil, Guyana, the Caribbean. Cartels are not loyal to flags. They are loyal to corridors. And Russia's involvement helps keep those corridors predictable. Russia's broader regional strategy is not to replace the United States. It is to complicate U.S. strategy, to stretch attention, to divide focus, to create uncertainty. Every embassy opened, every military agreement signed, every trade deal discussed. Each one forces Washington to respond. This is asymmetric competition. Russia knows it cannot outspend the United States. It does not need to. It only needs to interfere at the margins. Central America is especially vulnerable to this approach. Small economies, fragile institutions, high exposure to organized crime. When Russian influence enters these environments, it blends easily, not through ideology, through pragmatism. A government under pressure looks for partners who ask fewer questions. Russia asks very few. This is why cartel dynamics matter here. When enforcement becomes politically complicated, criminal networks gain breathing room. When extradition becomes controversial, leadership stays insulated. When foreign policy shifts, drug policy follows. Russia understands that it does not need to touch the drug trade directly. It only needs to shape the environment in which it operates. Now zoom out one last time. From Venezuela to Nicaragua, from Brazil to Argentina, from Colombia to the Caribbean. Russia is stitching together a loose network, not an alliance, a presence. This presence does three things. It challenges U.S. influence, it protects sanctioned partners, and it indirectly stabilizes illicit economies that benefit from political insulation. The result is a hemisphere where power is contested, enforcement is fragmented, and criminal networks adapt faster than policy. This is why the drug war cannot be separated from geopolitics, because cartels do not operate in a vacuum. They operate inside political systems, and those systems are increasingly shaped by global competition. Russia does not need to win Latin America. It only needs to make it contested. And as long as that contest continues, the shadows grow larger. This is breaking down the cartels,